Hello, in this lecture we will begin discussing what happens in the fall in the Genesis account. So this is a continuation of the Genesis worldview, and we will talk about the fall, and then in particular the 5 points of the fall. Now we'll go back here to chapter 2 of Genesis, and in the narrative here, this is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Now no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. Now notice here the Lord God. The Lord God is used as opposed to just God, and God said. So over here there's Elohim, God the Creator. And so the Hebrew word here is Elohim, which is God the Creator, not to be confused with the Mormon view of Elohim. And over here it's the Lord God, which is in connection to the idea of Jehovah, and not to be confused with Jehovah's Witnesses. But this is more the relational God. This is more Creator God in the original Hebrew. This is more the relational God. And so there's a relationship God has with the creation, and in particular a relationship with mankind. And the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. So it had not rained, and it will not have rained until the flood happens. But here it says, but streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. It was like a built-in irrigation system. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. So this is where God puts the body and soul together. And so a human being is a body and soul unity, a body-soul unity. And when someone dies, they become a disembodied spirit. So they're not human anymore, in the sense that humans are a body and soul together, a physical body and a non-physical soul. And when those things are together, that is what a human is, and that is a being that's created in God's image, as a rational being, as a thinking being. So God is infinite, eternal, and unchanging, and human beings are finite, temporal, and changing, that we're able to change in our views about good and evil, for example, and that's what will happen here in the fall. Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east, in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. The Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now we'll have to bring out what this actually means. What is the tree of life signify, and what does the tree of knowledge of good and evil signify? Did they know good and evil before that? Can we make a logical inference that they did know that? And perhaps the meaning here is different than what it really is understood to be. So a river watering the garden flowed from Eden, and from there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. Aromatic resin and onyx are also there. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush, which is Ethiopia today. The name of the third is the Tigris. It runs along the east side of Asher, and the fourth river is the Euphrates. And so you've heard of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They're in the Middle East, in Iraq. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. So God is explaining this to the man, and he's put there. And remember, the work of dominion is supposed to continue. Don't forget the 5 points of creation. You won't understand the 5 points of the fall without properly having in place the 5 points of creation. And then when we get to redemption, there'll be 5 points of redemption, and you won't understand redemption apart from the fall and creation. So it's important to put these things in context. So what does it mean, again, what does it mean, the tree of knowledge of good and evil? And what does it mean that you will certainly die? What does it actually mean? Because when they eat from it, they don't die. They don't physically die, at least. What other kind of death must there be? So the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. So the work of dominion is continuing here. He's naming the creation. He's identifying the nature of each creature and naming the creation. This is part of the work of dominion, the knowledge of God through the work of dominion. So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds in the sky, and all the wild animals. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So we see here that it's against the nature of things for humans and animals to have intercourse. That would be called bestiality, which is against the nature of things. There's no suitable helper for Adam, the man. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. So woman was inside of man, and the more accurate depiction was that God, it was a human being, and out of a human who's Adam came the man, came the woman, and man and woman were brought together again. So then the Lord God made a woman from the rib, and then he brought her to him. And then the man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called a woman, for she was taken out of man." Woe man. That's how sometimes people say it. Woe man. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. So God brings them together. God brings her to the man. Kind of like in a wedding, the woman is brought to the man. The father of the bride brings his daughter to the man, and they become one. And here, Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. There's no sin in the world yet. They are continuing in the work of dominion that we discussed in the first 5 points of creation. Okay? And so the fall is going to continue here, and we will see what's happening here in the fall as we go on. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" So he's getting to something here. So think about all what God had told the man, and it implies here that the man is going to have, he has taught his wife some of these things, but we'll see if he taught her sufficiently and what happens. Okay, so remember, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." So what happened here with her? What was told? Well, earlier, what would you give her? Would you give her A, B, B minus, C plus? Did she pass in terms of what was said? Maybe a C, maybe C, C plus, C minus. So God told the man some of these things, but it seems like she added, and you must not touch it or you will die. God didn't say you must not touch it. He just said don't eat from it. So what can we infer that her husband is teaching her? And so the serpent here gives a stark contradiction to what is being said. You will certainly not die. So again, what is going on in her mind when she says this, or you will die? How does she understand that? How is her husband understanding that? Okay, what kind of death is it? You will die. And then the serpent says, you will certainly not die. What is understood by death here? For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. This is interesting. For God knows, you will certainly not die, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Interesting. So your eyes will be open. Aren't they open right now? They're seeing things right there. What's going on? And you will be like God. Well, how will you be like God? You will be like God, knowing good and evil. Well, how does God know good and evil? And how do humans know good and evil? How does the Creator know good and evil, as opposed to how do the creatures know good and evil? How do those which God created know good and evil? So this is where it's very, very interesting in connection to making logical inferences. Okay. So your eyes will be open. Your eyes will be open physically. Well, their physical eyes are already open. He's meaning your spiritual eyes. You'll be like God. Well, first of all, you can never be like God, because you can never be that which has no beginning and ending. That doesn't make any sense. And you can never determine good and evil for yourself, knowing good and evil, determining good and evil for yourself, as opposed to discovering what good and evil is. Because you were created. You were created by God, so you don't determine good and evil. Only God, the Creator, determines good and evil. Only God determines your nature as a created being. And in that sense, only God is able to know good and evil. So humans cannot know good and evil, determine good and evil like God does. And the serpent is saying things in stark contrast to that. You'll be like God. You can't do that, and you can't determine good and evil. So something's happening here in her mind, in her husband's mind. Here it says here, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it, and she also gave to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. So what happened here? When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. So did they fall before they ate the fruit, or when they ate the fruit? Did they fall when they ate the fruit here, or did they fall in their minds? Were their minds already gone? The woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye. She saw that was already in her mind, and also desirable for gaining wisdom. That happened in her mind first, so she was already gone mentally, spiritually. And then it manifested by her eating the fruit. And her husband too. He was right next to her, not saying anything. Whatever you want, baby. Whatever you want, baby. And so he wasn't leading her. He was being led by her. Perhaps you could say he was putting sex with her above God. And he cared for her in one sense, but he didn't care for her enough spiritually to teach her properly, because he himself was not seeking. So they both were there. So then the eyes of both of them were open, and they realized they were naked. And we'll pick up on here later on. And so we'll continue here in the next lecture with 5 points of the fall.